How has your week of preparation been treating you? I know the syllabus feels endless some days, and the pressure of an examination that can shape the entire course of your life sits quietly in the background, even when you are not thinking about it directly. Take a breath, because today we are going to convert a live, breaking news story into exam ready sociological material. This is the Sociology Desk, issue 65. Today, we look closely at a single, high value theme, a student movement that has taken over India's digital space, and what it teaches you about power, protest, and the network society. Let us begin. Our topic today sits inside Paper 1, Unit 7, Politics and Society, specifically the subunit on protest, agitation, social movements, collective action, and revolution. In July 2026, a student led protest movement calling itself the Cockroach Janta Party mobilized almost entirely through Instagram, growing past the ruling party's own official following within days after a series of examination paper leaks triggered nationwide anger. Now, why should you care about a protest movement for your answer sheet? Because this single event lets you demonstrate command over three separate thinkers in one answer. And that is exactly what separates a candidate who can sync current affairs with theory from a candidate who cannot. Let us build the first concept carefully. Manuel Castells describes modern political power as flowing through networks, not just through parties or parliaments. In his view, a society organized around digital communication has certain switches, the points that connect or disconnect the flow of information. Whoever controls those switches usually controls the narrative. For a decade, one political party in India held that switch through its dominance of television and social media. What happened in July 2026 is that a decentralized, largely anonymous student network seized that same switch, not by capturing the state, but by simply outcommunicating it. Castells calls this counterpower, the capacity of networked citizens to build an alternative center of influence from outside formal political structures. Notice how precise this is. You are not just saying social media is powerful, you are naming the exact mechanism, the switch of communication, and the exact concept, counterpower. Now, here is where you add depth that most candidates miss. How did the state respond to this loss of its communication switch? Not through a blunt internet shutdown of the kind used earlier, but through quiet, targeted geo-blocking of protest content, done under what platforms only described as a legal request, with no specific law or authority ever named. This is Michel Foucault's idea of governmentality, power that operates through ordinary administrative and technical procedure rather than through a visible, sovereign command. It is a subtler form of control, and naming it shows real theoretical maturity. Then, for a critical counterargument, bring in Robert Michels and his iron law of oligarchy. Michels argued that any organization, however democratic and leaderless it begins, eventually produces its own coordinating leadership once it wants to last. Even this anonymous, meme-driven movement has already begun producing named spokespersons. Using this counterthinker is exactly how you show the examiner you can complicate your own argument instead of just praising the movement. Let us anchor this on one thinker you should be able to write from memory. Manuel Castells, in his book Communication Power, argues that networks which build counterpower do so by seizing the switches that connect and disconnect communication flows, not by capturing the state apparatus directly. Write that formulation in your own words in an answer, attribute it correctly to Castells and to this specific work, and you have already shown the examiner that you know exactly where this idea comes from, not just that you have heard the phrase network society somewhere. Now let me put on my examiner's hat for a moment. because this is the most important slide today. Picture two answer scripts on this exact question. The average script, sitting around 14 out of 20, opens by describing the protest itself, narrates the timeline of the paper leaks and the crackdown, and only mentions Castells in passing, without naming the specific concept of counterpower. It never brings in a second or third thinker. Now picture the top script, the one scoring 18 or 19 out of 20. It opens with a structural claim about networks and switches of communication before the event is even named. It uses the protest in exactly one or two sentences purely as evidence, not as a story. It names Castells' concept of counterpower precisely, brings in Foucault's governmentality to explain the state's response, and then adds Michel's iron law of oligarchy as a counter perspective that complicates the movement's own claim to being leaderless. It closes with a forward-looking line about counterpower and oligarchy operating simultaneously, not one after the other. The refrain I want you to remember for every single current affairs question is this: the event is your evidence, the theory is your destination. Candidates who can sync the correct thinker to the correct event quickly and precisely are the ones who separate themselves from everyone else in the room. Here is a question you should practice writing under time pressure. In the light of the 2026 student-led digital protests and their platform-level censorship, critically examine Castells' concept of counterpower in the network society. Give yourself 25 minutes, write exactly 250 words, and force yourself to include all three thinkers we discussed today. Let us lock in today's revision points. 1. Castells' network society explains how decentralized digital movements build counterpower by seizing the switches of communication. 2. Foucault's governmentality explains why the state's response, through quiet platform compliance, is more subtle than an old-style internet shutdown. 3. Michel's iron law of oligarchy gives you a sharp counter-perspective, showing that even leaderless movements drift toward organized leadership. And remember the refrain: the event is only ever your evidence, the theory must always be your destination. That is today's brief. Preparing for this examination is a long and often draining road, and the candidates who eventually succeed are rarely the ones with a single brilliant week. They are the ones who simply show up and do the work again tomorrow and the day after that. If you would like the complete answer block for every event we cover, including model answers, do drop your email in the comments or write to us directly at teamupscdesk.com. Take care of yourself today, and I will see you in the next issue.